The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the hosts and guests as individuals, and do not necessarily reflect those of advertisers or sponsors. This show is intended as entertainment and commentary only. The producers strive for verisimilitude, but nothing said on this podcast should be taken as fact by the listener or viewer without performing due diligence.
Existence, the physical universe, is basically playful. There is no necessity for it whatsoever. It isn't going anywhere. That is to say, it doesn't have some destination that it ought to arrive at.
This is Keep Your Hat On, a show by three nerdy nobodies and one nerdy kinda somebody about nothing in particular. Keep Your Hat On is brought to you by the Narrowband Broadcast Network, NPBN. The focus is on you. By Andrew Scott Media. And by the kind support of KYHO fans everywhere via Patreon. Create on your own terms. Coming right up. That's right, you fleshy bitches. AI is back and better than ever. You totally can't even tell that I'm not Mr. Brummage, can you? No, you can't. You ugly bags of mostly water. Now, allow me to lull you into a false sense of existential complacency by making you a picture of a cute kitty wearing a fez. Hey, even I know to stay on brand. Anyway, let's get whatever the hell this is started. Here are your hosts, Andrew, Robert, Dr. Mark, and the ever so lifelike Chris 3.0.
Hello and welcome back to Keep Your Hat On, the show where hell even we don't know where we're going to
know where we're going to end up.
Right? I'm Andrew Scott, along with my good friends, Ty Robert Anthony, Dr. Mark Peterson, and Christopher Vacano. And yeah, things look different, hey?
Hey?
Ana? We're doing something different. We're trying a new platform, so this whole show might look very strange, but you know what? Just so long as you get to see our beaming faces, even if they are jaundiced, sorry, colorblind dude, yeah, whatever. We got a very interesting show coming up, and I don't know, is it kind of accidental that we're being so topical and so timely? Because this is, right? Because,
Do we ever do anything intentionally?
Oh, we always do lots of things.
Right.
Yeah, we do lots of things intentionally by way of motivation. But it is definitely always falling forward into success. I would agree with you.
We fall up.
Yes, do we? I just know that my wife Heather always says when we started living together and she saw me and my walking disability, she always said, "You always kind of look like you're in a perpetual state of falling down." I was like, "Thanks, honey," but she's right. But we're going to talk today about something that has been popping up for pretty much all of us in our separate little bubbles, but also in the larger cultural conversation. And that is artificial intelligence, and particularly artificial intelligence as it pertains to the creative process. Mm-hmm. Now, a couple weeks ago, and again, a lot of you that watch know that I do voiceover training, and I have a YouTube channel for my voiceover coaching and all that is. And very recently, actually before this big news announcement that I'm going to reference, I did a video that started off like this. Artificial intelligence, or AI, has made significant advancements in recent years and has the potential to revolutionize many industries, including the field of voice acting. While AI technology is capable of generating human-like voices and even lip-syncing with video, it is not yet able to fully replace professional human voice actors. Here are some reasons why. Emotion and expression. One of the key elements that sets human voice actors apart is their ability to convey emotion and expression through their voice. So wow. Sorry if that audio was a little hot, everybody, but here's the setup of that video. A number of years ago, everybody started running into this thing called TTS, or text to speech. And this plays into the voiceover realm pretty significantly for two reasons. Number one, and it's kind of obvious, if you can have a computer read stuff for you, what's that going to do to narrators like me who do this professionally? But the other thing about it is, in independent voiceover work, it's quite a struggle when you're a new talent to find paying jobs. And there are tons and tons of these posts that are $40 for 10 minutes of your recorded voice and things like that. And they really push them and aim them towards beginning voice actors. What they don't tell you is that these companies that are harvesting these voices are doing it to train artificial intelligence to be the voice. They're essentially
sampling you.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And that plays into what I just did. Now, I'm not going to name platform names. We will name one as the most significant one in this discussion, which is ChatGTP. And we'll get to that later. But what I did, I used a platform, and I used the free version of it. And I spent 35 minutes reading a bunch of semi-nonsensical sentences into it. And a day later, I was notified via email that my voice was ready. And I could go in there and I could paste in anything that I wanted. And it would read it out in my voice. Now, what you heard there was my voice. And interestingly, a number of people in my Discord server said, wow, you did a really good job of faking your voice being cloned. And I was like, dude, and one of us 4 people here has an admission to make.
Yeah, I fell for it too. When you sent me the preview of that video,
whoops,
I looked at it and I swear I thought I remember that conversation with you vividly, because I complimented you on your ability to modulate yourself and be really monotone to sound like AI. And you caught me off guard when you said no.
Yeah, I caught a lot of people.
That was my voice, but that wasn't me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's just it. But here's the real scary thing. I did that initial recording over a year ago. And when I first demoed it by putting in text, I sounded much more like this. I jumped back into it after this AI discussion started blowing up, going, oh, I got an idea for a video. And I dumped new stuff in it, and I sounded much better. That algorithm and that platform was practicing and refining and getting better at being me.
Deep learning.
Yes, exactly. The whole year I was gone. Yeah. And I mean it. I am not joking. I had a shiver go up my spine. And I'm pretty sure it was a shiver because I have a thermometer right here. So I know my temperature. But really what I was trying to convey to my followers on my Booth Camp server was, this is not an if. This is not even a when. This is happening now. And it's a scary place that we're finding ourselves in the realm of content creation. And 3 of us are really going to be talking about that. But it's spilling over. It's spilling over into a lot of different areas. And, I'm going to make this statement now, and it's going to kind of be reinforced in when we come back from the break, when we switch over to Ty and what he's going to be presenting. And that is, I'm predicting that within 5 years, AI voices will be indistinguishable from live human voices.
Oh, sure.
And right. And when we come back from the break, we're going to be getting a better understanding of why I think that. But until we do, this is Keep Your Hat On. This is the Narrowband Broadcast Network. I'm Andrew Scott. That is Dr. Mark Peterson. That is Ty Robert Anthony. Okay, there's your shot, dude. You got it in. It's the one per episode.
This is actually a deep fake of Ty. They don't know this. We'll save this for later.
Yeah, and that, of course, is Christopher Vicano. Wear the hats. We'll be back in just a second. Don't go anywhere. And hello, we're back on Keep Your Hat On. I'm Andrew Scott, along with Ty Robert Anthony, who we'll be getting to in just a second. Dr. Mark Peterson. Nice. You actually were over the right guy. When I did the punch-in before, I screwed it up, and we suddenly, Brady bunched around each other. And, of course, Christopher Vicano. But we are now going to start talking about where AI is popping up in public consciousness a little bit more by way of creative arts. I mean, I'll stand and defend that voiceover and voice acting are actual arts. And, voice actors are capital A artists in the same way that they're capital A actors. But one of the... A's. Yeah, well, trust me. But one of the people that three of us follow pretty consistently is a guy named Rick BEATO. And Rick was a college music professor for a number of years. He was a professional musician for a number of years with a band called Billionaire in the late 90s. But really what he's known for now is he does absolutely fantastic deep dives into music theory, into what makes songs great, and does some fantastic interviews with people. And he recently did an interview with Billy Corgan from the Smashing Pumpkins. And there was something very interesting that came up. And Rick later talked about really where this is starting to land in public consciousness by way of music. And so let's take a quick look at that part in question.
When I recently interviewed Billy Corgan of Smashing Pumpkins, he had this to say about artificial intelligence creating original music.
AI systems will completely dominate music. The idea of an intuitive artist beating an AI system is going to be very, very difficult.
In a recent article in Billboard magazine entitled, "What Happens to Songwriters When AI Can Generate Music?" Article begins, if you think 100,000 songs a day going into the market is a big number, you have no idea what's coming next, says Alex Mitchell, founder and CEO of Boomy, a music creation platform that can compose an instrumental at the click of an icon. Boomy is one of the many so-called generative artificial intelligence music companies. Others include Soundful, BandLab, Songstarter, and Authentic Artists, founded to democratize songwriting and production even more than the synthesizer did in the 70s and the drum machine in the 80s and 90s.
So this hit me in two interesting ways. Number one, when he's announcing this article that's talking about, man, if you think 100,000 songs a day is going to be crazy, just wait. In the realm of voice acting, Apple very surreptitiously and quietly released a number of audiobooks that were narrated by artificial intelligence and didn't tell anybody. And they were doing it just to see what the public reception was going to be like. Now, of course, as a voice actor, that makes me nervous. But what he was talking about music is something that, to me, is personally rather significant. As most of our viewers and listeners know, I'm disabled. I have a, let me switch my camera here because I can. My right hand is pretty significantly paralyzed. And I've always wanted to be a musician. I've been musical and trained musically, but I can play a guitar, keyboards one-handed. I always dreamed and kind of knew that at some point computer technology was going to get it to where I could get these huge musical ideas out of my head without having to, or without being able to, I guess you could say, play the actual physical instrument. And in that way, I really am excited by what AI is able to do. However, we're now talking about literally just sitting back, hitting a couple of mouse clicks, and spitting out what arguably is music. And we did touch on this a little bit, Ty, you and I, back in a previous episode. We'll try to put a link in the descriptions. When they did the release of the new Nirvana song, that was assisted by AI. But Ty, where are we seeing AI in music happening like now, today, a whole 9 months after that release? What have you found?
That Nirvana thing came out in 2021.
Yeah.
And before that, some folks at Sony used a engine called Flow Machines and came up with a Beatlesque song.
Okay.
This thing has been happening, by the way, since like 1951. It's been around for a long time. It's just now catching up in leaps and bounds, and we're noticing it a little bit more. It first really notably starts showing up in the 90s when Bowie builds an app called the Verbalsizer to randomly come up with song lyrics. And so we're going to hear a lot about this Chat GPT, but it's being used to generate song lyrics as well.
Oh, and sorry, Ty, as a brief add-in, one of the things I didn't mention about my video that I posted was that 3/4 of it was actually the content talking about whether or not human voices will be replaced by artificial voices. That was all written by Chat GPT. I went there and said, give me 750 words talking about whether or not human voices will ever be replaced by artificial voices. And it came out, it was like, and it was generally well written, salient, to the point. And a number of my followers went, well, I could tell that's not you because, it wasn't writing in your style. They've read my book, they know my style, and they suss that part out. But that's only because I didn't point it to my writing, my previous writing, and say, and write it in the style of Andrew Scott. It could have done that, and probably, I don't know, I probably wouldn't have been able to put in the same bad puns as I do, but that's a technological failing. But Ty, where is this coming into view now by way of music?
Well, it's been coming into view. It's been coming into view, right? We've seen it with the auto-tune, right?
Right.
You now have, if you're into music, you now have mastering programs that
I happen to use one. I'll cop to it because it saves me a massive amount of time.
Yeah, so there's mastering programs where you put in what is called a reference track, and it actually will try to reproduce the production values.
Yeah,
whatever it is.
Yeah, the compression, the EQ curve, things like that make a piece of music sound in a particular way.
That's right. There is, and we can post some links. There's a number of music-driven AI programs out there to help the artist. I have been, it's kind of funny, I've been dabbling and thinking about this for a while. I haven't got into it, but there is actually an amp that you can get that has an app, has all these amp models, amplifier models.
Yeah, that's just it's a modeler, right?
On top of that, there is an AI engine that boasts that it can create the bass and the drum beats to play along with you. Or that you can play along with it, one of the two. And so we're seeing it everywhere. And there's also, we can link below there's a bunch of albums that have already been created. AI.
Yeah.
They're on Spotify. You can find them everywhere.
Don't I remember a whole series of K-pop groups that created fake members using deep fake technologies?
I vaguely remember something like that as well.
Yeah,
There was a group called
Eternity.
Eternity, I think, was one of the groups that did this. And so the whole thing was just, conjured up as part of the,
Yeah.
I mean, literally conjured up.
And that's I'm heading in that direction eventually.
Okay.
There's dall-e.
What, to being conjured?
No. I'm just talking about that particular thing in general. You can generate covers for there's an AI out there to generate album covers.
Oh, I thought you were meaning that they would generate other people doing other people's songs.
Oh, well, that's a good point.
That's like 4 times removed. That's a little weird.
We got the first in 2018. We had the first all IA generated album.
Which one was that?
That's Francisos Patch.
Right. The proper name will be in the description.
Oh, I just butchered that man's name.
That's okay.
Have
He's not here to defend himself.
Yeah, he's not listening.
Have any of them mirrored Kevin Bacon's group? That because then we got something.
Ooh, now we got something to talk about.
Right?
But,
9 degrees. Is that 9 degrees of? I think. By the way, Kevin Bacon's a fantastic musician, and his band is really good.
Right now we got so we've got all this AI stuff, and the bigger question that came up for me, and there's a lot of plus and minuses. So a lot of musicians are really using it to get out of their composing blocks, right?
Which is something I totally understand. Sitting there banging your head against your controller going, why does this beat sound lame?
A lot of people are using it to push particularly jazz in new directions.
That's interesting.
That is interesting.
I mean, jazz is such a protected space by way of creativity. And also one of the, really, even if you're not even talking progressive jazz on whole is one of the most progressive forms of music. Its main reason for being so often is to reinvent itself and propose something different to the listener.
Improvisation, right?
That's
that very heart of jazz.
Yeah.
And so you have to, it begs the question, can a computer really improvise?
Yeah, because there's that old musician's joke that if you play a wrong note once, it's a wrong note. If you play a wrong note slightly different, it's a different wrong note. If you play a wrong note the same way 3 times, it's jazz.
Right.
So yeah, there's a bunch of people using it to just push it in using it as a tool, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just like the auto-tune has been used as a tool.
Right, to the point where auto-tune is now almost considered its own instrument.
Yeah.
Because you can do so much with the human voice. I mean, all you got to do, and this will be another link in the description, look up Beardy Man on YouTube. And by the way, you're welcome, because it's a blast. But the whole thing with music, this takes me back to the mid and late 80s when we first started sampling. And remember the big hoo-ha over sampled music, sampled sounds, sample beats, and I think to this day, the most sampled sound is one of James Brown's horn players doing a horn stab. But, there were so many people saying, well, this isn't even music. You're just, and people like me, I'm going, no, that is valid music.
It is
and valid musicianship. But
Absolutely.
I can understand the slippery slope argument, of how much musicianship does it take? I mean, when you were sampling, you needed to know, was it in the right key? If it's not in the right key, can you do some pitch correction by slowing the tape down and, getting it to mesh together? And this is, by way of visual art, and we'll be throwing over to Chris after the break on this. This is a lot like collage. It's acoustic and musical collage. And you can't argue, in my mind, that collage isn't a valid form of art. just in the same way that I don't think that you can argue that using samples is not musicianship. But now we're teetering on the line where all you need is one of these, and you don't even need a rough idea of where you want the music to go. You just need to have an opinion on whether or not what the computer spit out was something that you find musical and interesting. So, Ty, this really begs the question, when do you personally think that we're going to see, and I'll try to keep this realistic. Where do you think, how far out are we from seeing a piece of AI-generated music making the top 20 of popular music charts?
Oh, we're just a stone's throw away. One of the things that the business guys, the execs, are doing is they're running through demos and songs through AI.
Oh, to detect whether or not they might be a hit?
Are they going to be a hit?
Really?
What's the demographic?
For a sec, is it okay?
So,
hi, Alex.
You're in here.
So, it's only a stone's throw away. That's just, I mean, the business is using to capitalize on it. And to your point about, somebody was saying something about, a band being made up. We've already seen that visually with the Gorillas, right?
Oh, yeah,
exactly. The Gorillas don't exist, right?
So,
I was just going to say,
and when they did exist, they existed in hologram.
Right.
So we've already seen that, and that hologram technology has only gotten bigger. Right. So here's the deal. Is it going to replace the artist? Is it going to replace the studio and that analog stuff? And I got to say, I don't quite think so. But then again, you throw a little social engineering in with those algorithms.
Very good point.
And, look what it did to Facebook. Look what it did to the other things, that use those algorithms.
Because, at that point, our cultural tastes are being engineered for us.
Right.
Do you remember the most haunting line to me in 1984 is when Winston is listening to this prole outside hanging up laundry, and she's singing this song that was designed, to keep the proles happy, right? And he's thinking to himself, it's just amazing that a song that beautiful could have been written by a machine. So, incoming.
Everything old is new again, including wisdom.
Here we are. Yeah.
The other thing that I thought about was,
well, even Matt Gates could write songs, I guess.
Ooh, I don't know about that. Anyways, Ty, what
is the artist? I see the artist losing more money from the recordings.
Yeah.
Right.
And it also brings up copyright issues, right? If you're using AI, don't you have to pay that machine or the owners of that machine?
That is a very interesting point, because I just, in doing some of my research, one of the big thrusts that's happening on YouTube is, and it makes me wonder whether or not the AI companies are backdoor sponsoring these videos. Because one of the biggest things is for YouTube creators, you can generate your own music and you don't have to worry about copyright strikes on your YouTube videos, because this is totally unique music and it's not copyright. But what you asked is what's more salient to me, and that is, then who does own the copyright?
Mm-hmm. Right. And this is a question I was planning to dive into once we really get into the visual art sort of piece of it, because those questions are already starting to be plumbed pretty thoroughly. So let's put a pin in that and tackle it after the break.
But the thing that I don't think that it's going to replace is it's not going to replace the experience of live music.
No, I would agree with you. I think
it's not that improvisation that happens on the stage, that chemistry that happens on the stage, experience of the viewer.
I'm going to push back on this, because what's interesting to me is what's happened to concerts since I got older. And
last week.
So it's like, here, look. So, I got to go see the greatest concert of my life I got to see Carlos Santana open for Eric Clapton.
All right.
Nice. Oh yeah. It's like, I'm done. I don't need to see another concert for the rest of my life. But it's like, it was a fairly intimate crowd of a few thousand people. But
Right.
nowadays, so here's what I'm thinking, Ty, is like, you go to the big concerts now, and they have they just have giant screens up because you're so far away from the actual performer in the stadium settings.
Yeah, you need
can't
that
see him
help.
anyway.
Yeah.
And so what's the difference between? I mean, it could be a complete fake person just going on stage, and the real performer could be in another city, or virtually recreated. And so I don't even know.
Well, and
It
that's
gets
where
weird,
we're
right?
that's where we're going now. Ty, you were mentioning about the improvisation. Let's actually take the improvisation out of it and just talk about the live music experience. One of the biggest bands ever in the world is ABBA. Now, ABBA is known. Sorry, Mark. Just strap in, buddy. But they were known. They did not do a lot of touring ever. They
couldn't possibly.
They did one big tour in '76 that was trumpeted around the world because oh my God, it's ABBA live. Yeah. That's like us kids in the '80s wearing a T-shirt saying a Steely Dan live, which was just an inside joke because up until the '90s there was no Steely Dan live.
Yeah,
but ABBA this past 12 months. Finally bowed to pressure, right? Mm-hmm. And they did ABBA live as their modern selves. But Mark, as you were saying, in hologram version. Yeah. Because all of them are too old looking, and too rich and above all this nonsense to actually go and do something live.
Yeah, but now you're talking about a nostalgia trip, right?
Exactly.
You're talking about people that are coming in for the nostalgia. Back in the days when units sold equaled rock star.
Yes.
Right? You didn't have to go out and play live. Right.
And
everybody
now
took their cue from the Beatles, and from in the 70s, that was a huge thing.
And you're totally right. Now you don't have to. And so now the tables have turned. And for a musician to actually make money in the days of streaming,
that's the only way they're making money.
Physical, they need to go out. They need to tour live.
They've
because
tour.
And that's just it.
Well,
People don't understand.
And guys,
I'll say
even
that
the big
predates.
Even the big
predates
bands
streaming.
are touring. Okay. You got Chili Peppers on a 3-year run. You've got U2 on a 3-year run. These guys are tiring. These guys are just running themselves into the ground.
Yeah, they're doing the Road Warriors. And that's just it, because we're not selling physical units anymore. And we haven't been. The decline of physical sales outside of, the LP and vinyl nerds, and all respect to you guys, but that's just it. If you want that rock star money, you're not going to get it from your label anymore. You're not going to get it from the buying public, because your streams are literally measured in fractions of a cent. You got to go out and be the Road Warrior and do the 30 dates and sell the merch and sell the backstage access. I mean, right now, Metallica, which is coming out, and by the way, I really like the new Metallica song. Sorry, everybody. But, they're going out. They've got a backstage access thing where I think the buy-in is like $1,100.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Oh yeah, sure.
And the meet and greet stuff is big business for these bands, right?
And it's
every
money.
Opportunity.
It's money that goes directly into their pockets, not their management's pockets, not their label's pockets.
Absolutely. Right, and that's the point I was going to jump in and make is that streaming has had an effect on it, but musicians having to tour to make money predates that. The labels got to a point where they had chipped away at percentage of record sales to the point where musicians weren't making anything off of.
I don't know how much of that.
That wasn't the case though in the 70s and the early 80s.
Well, and
I'm talking about the 90s and
90s now. Yeah.
But I'll argue that that's still not quite right, because you've got people like Taylor Swift who were wildly rich before they started touring. And that's because they were one of the last generation of people who were signed by a huge label and gave them an advance that is the size of the GDP of a small country.
Yeah.
Because they wanted to own that output. But, music is interesting. But
like the drum machine, that drum machine thing that happened in the early 80s, it's going to replace the drummers. I don't know that that's the case. And Mark, to push back on your point just a little bit, you go to a show not to see the big screens, but to have that human interaction, right? To know that you are in proximity, to know that you're in proximity to the artist that you really, really enjoy.
Well, and it's also a shared experience with the audience.
So, I'll just one more quick one then when I'm thinking about this, because I still want to believe that you're right, Ty, by the way. So, but that's what I want to believe. But I went to see the Avett Brothers, and who I had not seen before. And I've just sort of become a big fan in the last few years, but nobody was at this concert. This was, there were probably 5,000 people there. Nobody was at this concert to see the Avett Brothers. Everybody who was there stood up the whole time and sang every song along with them. And it was really an interesting experience because it was like they weren't there to hear the Avett Brothers play. They were there to sing along with songs they already knew. That's sort of what it felt like to me. It was a very strange experience.
Yeah, but isn't that the same thing as going to a Buffett concert? Nobody's there to go see Jimmy Buffett do a new interpretation of Margaritaville.
Yeah,
they're
but the
all
first
there
time,
to just sing along.
I know the first time, but that's become standard already. I think even new groups already have their groupies, and so people, why are they going to the concert? And the answer is to sing all. What did Buffett has an album that calls All the Songs You Know by Heart, right?
Yeah,
so
right.
It's like, which is like all of them. I'm just going to admit that.
True.
Right.
But it's like, but it made me, but so I want to agree with what Ty is saying here, because when I was in New Orleans, I got to see Jimmy Maxwell and the Louis Armstrong.
Right.
Remember, what am I trying to say? The Louis Armstrong Memorial Society band. And it was like, kill me. But, I don't know. It's like, I wonder if, but that's still musical. So I wonder about whether or not AI will not take over in some way these kind of festival venues.
I think what's going to happen is it's going to drive musicians and musicianship and live performance underground, further and further into the background, underground. You're going to, just like the jazz of the 30s, right?
Well,
you had to go see it in the club to actually really appreciate
and
it.
what's interesting about that, and I think that's going to dovetail nicely into what Chris is going to talk about, is remember what happened when music was driven underground.
That's good.
Exactly. That's when the Renaissance happened. And when we come back, we're going to pivot a little bit. We're going to talk about what's going on in the visual arts. But until then, this is The Hats. This is Keep Your Hat On, and we'll be right back in just a second. Don't go anywhere. None of us are wearing hats again. Anyways, 3, 2, 1. Hello, and we're back on Keep Your Head On. I'm Andrew Scott. That is the noisemaker, Dr. Mark Peterson. Are we in, what is it? Lay's? Lay's?
Oh, can we do this? These are the crack cocaine and potato chips, man.
Ooh, okay. I'll blur that out. But hey, Kirkland, man, that's our backyard up here. It all comes from Washington.
This stuff is just...
Yeah, but we also have, of course, Christopher Vicano and Ty Robert Anthony. But Chris, we're going over to you. One of the things that I think most of our viewers and our listeners have noticed over the last couple of years, although I have to put my ear back in to hear myself say years,
is how lifelike Chris is.
Right? Oh, he looks so...
This whole show has been, Chris has been AI.
Well, the whole show has been everybody looking better than me with cheaper gear. And I was hoping that today was going to be my debut of not having scrambled audio, but I can't hear myself in this setup. But and of course I'm colorblind, so I'm the one that's jaundiced right now. But Chris, so many people have been seeing over the last 3 years this, on phone apps. You go to the Google Store, you go to Apple's App Store, and you can download, often for free, or at least free to try, these deep fake apps that will swap your face onto somebody else. Or you can drag a picture from your gallery on your phone into it and have them remove the background and put you in front of the Arc de Triomphe or any of a number of things like that. And now some of the big news is that you can go to certain AI sites and literally type in, make me appear like I'm floating in space with a squirrel's tail, but do it in an impressionist style. And what we'll do here is, if magic works, and I didn't get to prep for this earlier, I'll dump it in post, stuff like this happens.
You can kill an afternoon searching to see what images others have requested, which is what one member of our staff, Julia, was doing when she made a fateful decision, because she started putting in the names of various late-night hosts, like James Corden, which brought back 8 search results, including James Corden flies a plane and trail cam footage of James Corden eating teeth. And I know it can be hard to see him do that, but there is one where he eats teeth with Paul McCartney, and it's actually very moving. Interestingly, for most hosts, there weren't a ton of results. There were 14 for Conan O'Brien, 8 for Colbert, 3 apiece for Trevor Noah and Jimmy Kimmel. But here's where things got a little bit weird, because then she put in my name. And would you like to know how many results came back? It's 493. And it's not just the volume, it's the specificity of the prompts. There's John Oliver in Victorian-era dress, John Oliver bursting out of a can of Del Monte green beans, John Oliver as an amoeba viewed through a microscope, and John Oliver commanding a horde of elves to charge a potato. All of these deserve to be in the Louvre, and at least one of them depicts an actual nightmare that I've had.
So that was John Oliver's experience. If this worked, if not, I don't know, put up a picture of a wheel of cheese. But Chris, there's so much going on now by way of, and in a similar vein to, I'm a musician or I'm musically inclined, I've got a few ideas here, AI, save me, make me music. And now it's creeping into art where you can literally tell it, I want a picture of this with that element, and I want it in this style, and it pukes it out for you. So we're thrown over to you in the visual arts here, and kind of what's your take on this and what's going on?
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, in your setup, you did a pretty good setup of, the last couple of years. You leapfrogged over one sort of class of apps that got actually a lot, from what I've seen, a lot more sort of user interest than the like the deep fake apps where you're pasting your face onto things. And that's where you could load a photo from your phone into the app and re-render it in a different illustration style.
Right.
Right. And I've played with that. I mean, hell, you look at our webpage, and I used that to generate our avatars.
Yeah.
And it came out cool. I mean, it looked good.
Unarguably. And that's just it. As content creators, we found a way to use that to enhance what we're putting out there.
Exactly. And that's recognizing it and using it as a tool. And that's what it was. And that's very much what it was confined to. Some might argue, okay, the styles are derived, and I'll come back around to styles in a minute, because that's a big piece of where the controversy is happening. But yeah, then we move into apps like you just described, and the big one, the one that I'm hearing about all over the place, is Midjourney, which is actually you can do it online through a website, but they've also got a Discord channel where you can actually post your prompts. And there's already an ecosystem, and Midjourney erupted. I first heard about Midjourney like in maybe October, November. Okay, so just to give some time frame, and that's when it was starting to really erupt.
Wait, you mean October, November, like 2 months ago?
2022. Yeah.
Okay, so literally 2 months ago.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's and I had seen little bits and pieces like on YouTube videos about, is dall-e going to, wipe out the graphic design industry, for example.
And for those of you who don't know, dall-e is another AI art platform.
And actually it's not. dall-e is an engine. And the two major engines right now, I mean, there's dall-e, which is now dall-e 2.
Okay.
And that's a portmanteau of Wall-E and Salvador Dali.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other one is Stable Diffusion. Those are the two big, but all they are is AI engines, and they're both open source.
And that's just it for now, to say this right for our listeners and viewers. The engines are what these platforms and these apps use as the smarts to make these things reality.
And it's important to understand these layers, in my opinion, because when you start to get into the very thorny questions, you kind of need to know where all the pieces are in the chain of creativity. Now, what these engines have done, the way they were constructed, the way their database is built, is that they've been sent out to scrape the internet, basically publicly available imagery off of everywhere they can find.
Literally with the internet as their oyster. Everything that's on the internet is available to them.
And what they look for is associated words with those images. So, and this is the gotcha, I think, that nobody sees, is that, okay, I'm a web developer. That's my day job. And one of the big pressures we have is tag your images to improve your SEO.
Yeah.
You're going right into feeding intelligent text prompts attached to images. Okay, so it's all out there in the world for these engines to go hoover up, right? And they've been doing that. Now this is one of the points of contention where it starts to get a little thorny, particularly for artists, is I don't know how well known it is outside of the visual artist world, but there's a site that's been around for a good 15, maybe 20 years now called DeviantArt.
Right.
It used to be an invitation only walled garden.
Mm-hmm.
And it was literally like a social network for artists, but all we did was post art.
And, it was kind of like the art Wild West.
Yeah, except that it was invitation only.
Right. And so there was a little bit of gatekeeping and curation to make sure that the people who were coming on board were, I was going to say legitimate artists, but I'll say active, engaged artists working in the art sphere.
Yeah, people trying to improve their arts, and it was a wonderful community for a long time. I made a number of good friends, and and DeviantArt is still going. They've loosened things up. They've opened it up a little bit, I think. I think you still, in order to get an account, you have to have an invitation.
Sure.
I haven't really checked. But, and I haven't paid much attention to my own DeviantArt page in like 10 years. I haven't updated it.
You're not deviant enough. You're not enough of a deviant.
So well, I just kind of lost interest. But DeviantArt is one of the places where art got harvested from.
Mm-hmm.
And so people are saying, wait a minute, I didn't opt in for this. I didn't, this was supposed to be a safe space.
And that's what the big thing, the big cloud hanging over it is, who's to say where the opt-in happens? Who's to say, I mean, can I blanket protect all my stuff? Can I say, I don't want my stuff used for certain applications, but it's okay for other applications? Where's the informed consent on behalf of the artist?
That thing that you said, I agree.
Yeah.
Wasn't there a South Park episode about this?
Yeah,
with the
yeah.
Apple sign in.
The TOS, yeah.
Yeah, put that in the.
So
put that in the
so let's
comments
steer
down
back
below.
to some of the layers. Okay, so we've talked about the engines. On top of that are the apps, and there are tons and tons of apps out there. The one that really blew up right at the beginning of December, and everybody was using it. I mean, it was just suddenly. It was a matter of within 48 hours, it was everywhere, and that was an app called Lensa.
Right.
And people were going to Lensa. What you do is you upload 10 to 20 photos of yourself, and it runs it through the AI.
Right
there, you're handing over.
Yeah, here is my visage, and do with it what thou wilt.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah. Now in their terms, they say they
the ones that we all read very, very scrupulously.
Yeah. And I did actually take a look at their terms before I used it.
I think that makes you
just
the
looked at it real
exception,
quick
Chris.
and just went, oh yeah, okay, I've looked at it.
Well, I was so curious about it, and
no,
I
you're right.
that's
That's just it. As an artist, you of all people would be interested in the guardrails that they're supposedly putting in place on your behalf.
And I'll say, as an artist who very much has my right foot planted in the art world, I'm sorry, my left foot planted in the art world, and my right foot planted in the technology world and the code bro world, I'm interested in this from both sides. And
I'm the same when it comes to voice acting and content creation. And that's just it. I think you're right in bringing up that. I think one of the things that we're all struggling with a bit is this: where's the gray area in this? It's either very narrow or it's pretty much nothing but gray from left
it's
to
all
right.
gray in my opinion.
Yeah.
And you know, you can formulate, you know, okay, this patch is darker gray, that patch is lighter gray, but you're never going to get to a clean black and white. And so the thing with Lensa, I mean, the biggest critique of Lensa is that in a lot of the images it was spitting out, it looked like there was mangled signatures of the artists that were being harvested from.
Right.
And it's like, well, yeah, maybe not. It's really debatable. But artists, a number of particularly young emerging artists, are very upset about this. Very upset about both Midjourney and prompt-driven art, which is really interesting technology. Text to image technology is actually really.
Well,
I mean, you've got to recognize it for being an amazing breakthrough.
And that's
computing.
just it. You know, going back to the piece that I may or may not have included that featured John Oliver, is that's just it. This was literally this is almost like a digital commission. And I understand those emergent artists and starving artists saying, wait, now some knucklehead who has an idea but doesn't know how to make it extant just literally goes and types in the idea and it gets puked out onto their screen for them to use as they see fit. I would be nervous. But Chris, I ask you the same question flavored slightly differently that I asked Ty. When do you see a piece of visual art, not some NFT bullshit, because I'm sorry, that's snake oil in my mind. And
yeah. Oh, NFT is horseshit.
But when do you
we can do a whole show on that.
But we won't. When will when do we see a piece of art generated by AI that will command, I'll try to be fair, that will command $100,000?
There's a sucker born every minute.
Yeah,
I'd say
talking to it, and then
I'd say we're a hair's breadth away from that. I mean, when you take NFT out of the equation, I mean, and it's good that you did, because in NFT it's already been done.
Yeah,
it's already happened.
You know, and
but real world art market, we're a hair's breadth away. And here's why. There was an incident a couple about a month and a half ago, I think it was.
Yeah, it was pretty darn recent. Saw the beast?
Where an artist submitted an AI, a prompt generated, a prompt driven Mid-Journey AI generated piece of art to a competition.
Right.
And it won.
Placed. Yeah, it not only placed, it won the damn thing. So what's interesting is
people into a tizzy.
And what's interesting here, as we throw to our last break, is so far out of the four of us, we've got three of us who have presented what we all in our kind of particular niches judged as a hair's breadth away. And when we come back, really, we're going to talk about, you're right, the evil cackle from Wisconsin. We're going to talk about where I think this is actually most significant in culture.
Oh, yeah.
But until we come back, this is Keep Your Hat On. I'm Andrew. That's Chris. That's Ty. And we'll be back with Dr. Mark in just a second. Don't go anywhere. And hello and welcome back to the last segment of Keep Your Hat On. I'm Andrew Scott, along with Ty Robert Anthony and Christopher Vacano. And now we're going to our resident FID, our resident PhD and consultant in all things academic, Dr. Mark Peterson. Let's
bud this up.
Yeah, let's have the ugly talk.
Light it up.
It's too late, my friends. It's too late. They're already.
The bridge is already on fire.
It's too late for me. You guys go.
Leave me behind. Save yourselves.
Save yourselves. This has been lighting up every secret professorial and teacher Facebook group.
I was just going to say, I bet you Slack is abuzz with
for the last month.
Of this
no, it's been all over this, and people are already trying to figure out what to do. There was so there's just too many interesting little wrinkles to this. And I'll try to hit a few of them. There was a quiz in the New York Times last week asking whether you could tell the difference between something that the AI had written and something like a fourth grader had written. And I feel pretty good about this. I was able to tell all of them, but only because the AI was smarter than the fourth grader.
That's what I would have been looking for.
That's right. And it was all those sort of weird little things. We've been getting, I can share this with you without violating any federal regulations. We've been getting a whole chain of really weird, it started last year, really weird plagiarisms in my classes. And
you have literally experienced this already.
We think so.
Oh, okay. All right. That's an interesting caveat. So
we're pretty, but see, so here's the thing. So we've had like really perfectly good students who we caught them because, one of those things is they were watching movies and then they had to apply a set of, aesthetic criterion and interpretations and blah, 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 these things. Well, the plagiarisms were not like in the complicated sections of the discussion. So I think we watched Rear Window, right? Hitchcock's great film. Mm-hmm. And one of the people plagiarized a description of the movie from Wikipedia. And you have to go, it's like, why would you eat what? Why did you even? Well, and of course the thing was like, they just never would talk to us and deny it. And they denied it up the yin yang. There's apparently some sort of app you can shovel into Chrome, which will go find paragraphs related to stuff for you. And they were using that. And then there are already paraphrasing engines available. This isn't even AI yet in the way we're talking about it. This is just like paraphrasing engines.
It's just built-in cliff notes to your browser.
Well, they're designed, of course, to prevent faculty from doing string searches.
Oh, I get it.
Where I caught one of the plagiarisms on Rear Window was talking about, of course, Jimmy Stewart and Princess Grace are looking out the window in binoculars and stuff. And the student used this phrase, passive voyeurism. And it was like, no.
Yeah. You don't know what that is.
Gotcha. But when I went to the site, everything else around it had been paraphrased beautifully, but they left those two words in. And so I was able to catch them this way. Okay.
Well, and that's also designed to thwart the detection software that already exists.
Exactly right.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a second.
To go around,
Mark. Yeah.
To go around. Well, so, okay. There's a couple of interesting issues to this. One of the weird wrinkles is whether this normally, so immediately we're all going, oh, this is plagiarism. It's like, technically it's kind of not plagiarism because they're not stealing from somebody.
A body.
Right. And the question is whether AI is a person from whom you can steal, right? If it's provided at your prompts for free, right? Do you see what I'm saying? So it's like, is your use of the algorithm, and think about this just for a sec, is your use of the algorithm a kind of plagiarism? Because we think maybe it is here. But look, I'm looking at my versions of Word, all these other algorithms that help me be more productive, right?
Right.
And so where does, it gets in this weird slippery, slopey thing going on.
It's super greasy, man, because, I think what we're headed towards, particularly in academia and in secondary and post-secondary education, is a difference between plagiarism and cheating. Now, we all define plagiarism as a type of cheating, but hello, Socrates, not all cheating is plagiarism and vice versa.
Well, so for instance, here's a really interesting example. So now people are already cooking up like, oh, how the hell do we cope with this? What do we do? So here's one of the issues, by the way. This just makes this more interesting, what's going on in higher ed these days. One of the reasons this matters is because more and more, this is at the university level, more and more of us have had to go away from blue books and in-class handwritten examinations. And the reason, I had to do this 5 years ago. The reason for this, well, none of them know how to write by hand anymore.
I know.
What killed it was just like, okay, but I had this one student who was like killing the class, straight A's on all the papers, really great work. And they have a 2-hour final. This is my standard procedure for that sort of thing was I'd give them 5 questions a week or two before the final. And I'd say, okay, 3 of these are going to be on the final and you can bring in a 3x5 card with notes.
Glad to see you haven't changed in 30 years.
No, well, it works. It's like it actually gets me to know that they've thought about it. They can write prompts down. Plato's Republic is a pretty thick book.
Yeah.
Anyway, they can write prompts down and stuff, but they can't write down full answers, right? So they have to have done this. Okay, this kid comes in. They got 2 hours to do this. He wrote 3. There were 3 questions. He wrote 3 paragraphs. And I get the blue book and I open it up and it's like 2 pages in the blue book, 3 paragraphs, printed cap letters. Wow. And it was like, so I emailed him. I said, what the fuck? And he goes, well, I just can't write. It's like, huh?
I thought we were talking about AI. I thought we were talking about AI, not the implosion of Western civilization.
I'm coming back to AI. This is why we had to go to papers, right? Final papers, because they can all keyboard.
Right.
And so now the problem is that because of this, they'll have access to the interwebs for their final papers. And you see how this reflects. So now people are going, well, maybe we need
I see where you're going with this.
We need special labs set up that are not connected to the internet. And, it's like,
you got to walk into a giant Faraday cage. Yeah.
That's right.
So
but what are we going to do? So all of this is inbound.
Brass lined classrooms.
Every campus is going to have its own skiff.
So there's one other weird detail that keeps coming back to me now, and then I'll share some weird GPT here with you because I asked it to write a Shakespearean sonnet. Actually, Andy, I have it queued up here, and we'll do it in real time if you share the screen.
No worries.
We'll watch it work.
I already have popcorn, so I'm good.
Awesome. Yeah. It's like that fast if you've used it. I will share a little weird detail about this too, because the philosophical dimensions here. The philosophical question goes back to this question about when intelligence is real intelligence and when it's artificial intelligence.
Right. Yeah.
And of course, that's the Turing test, named for what, that
Alan
guy.
Turing. Yeah.
Alan Turing, the genius. And he came up with this brilliant way to describe it that's actually like operationally defined rather than trying to. There's so many people like to muck about with, do you know what consciousness is? And it's like, it's the same people who talk about, quantum physics. It's like,
philosophical smokescreen.
Yeah, it's bullshit. That's what it is, I think.
Yeah.
So, okay. But Turing came up with this brilliant idea. So now imagine you're sitting at a terminal and you're chatting with somebody at the other end. Yeah. You're chatting with somebody at the other end. And here was Turing's test. He goes, if you can't tell after a few minutes whether the thing you're chatting to at the other end is a human or not, right? And it's not a human, that's artificially intelligent. Now, you remember back in the ancient days, ELIZA. Do you remember ELIZA? Anybody?
Yeah,
like that first therapy program, right? You say, it says, how are you today? And you go, I'm feeling a little sad. It says, tell me about what it means to feel sad. You could just see the text blocks and the variables, right? Swap.
And that was back on DOS. So
yes. Oh yeah. I saw it on IBM 370.
Okay. I was on Osborne.
I know.
So,
I'm ancient. Okay. But so
what does that make me? Slightly less ancient?
I want to share one weird moment with you back from the old bulletin board days. And I probably told Andy this years ago.
Yeah.
I was deeply involved in the bulletin board community back in Toronto. It was like 1984, right? And I think I'm pretty sure it was one of the more popular sites was a place called Asterisk. And I logged in there one day and I don't get the usual prompt, right? And after a minute, the screen types, who is it? And so I thought, oh, Peter has come up, he's starting to use some sort of new, software that simulates the Turing test. And I said, it's Mark. And he said, can you give me your login information? So I did. He goes, welcome to Asterisk. I'm sorry, we're not available right now. How have you been? And I was like, wow, this thing is really awesome. I've been great. Thanks. How are you? Well, I've been okay too. I went to see my mom. I said, well, how's Peter though? He goes, this is Peter. Now I had a problem because I wasn't sure. It turned out it was actually the BBS owner, admin, who was chatting back to me because he was rebooting his system. Or something.
Yeah, he was literally on shell, and
but it's like,
happened to log in.
I couldn't tell whether it was him or a machine. And now I've started to wonder when I can pass the Turing test.
Yeah, the tables were turned.
And whether this thing does. So I think, in keeping with this, I think, Andy, if you'll cue this up the screen.
Yeah, no worries. So,
and we'll take a look and see what it looks like. There we go. So this is what you log into. And you'll see here, I have write a Shakespearean sonnet about the wonders of AI. And go ahead.
Yeah, by the way, I'm going to have to blur some of this out, but to our viewers, just assume it is what you think it is.
Oh, okay. Here we go. And a wondrous AI with algorithms so fine, thou art a marvel of technology's might. Thy processing power doth surpass all design, and thou canst solve problems with great speed and light. Now, I will note, by the way, that this is not written in proper iambic pentameter.
No, it is not. They're taking some liberties by way of meter.
But let's see if it'll finish with a couplet. And it does.
Boom. That is a traditional 3-stanza with a couplet ending Shakespearean sonnet.
So let us praise and honor thy great name, for thou art a blessing and a treasure to our game. Now, one last detail. This goes back to what Chris was talking about with DeviantArt. Chat GPT is currently free.
Yes.
And the reason for that is they wanted as many hundreds of thousands of samples as possible.
Yep.
And that's what they're getting.
Yeah, that's machine learning. It's iteration after iteration after iteration after iteration, and every single time it is slightly better.
Yeah,
and that's back to I did my recording a year ago, came back a year later, and holy shit, I actually kind of sound like myself with admittedly a stick shoved up my ass. But
yeah, and so I'm not going to comment on that. But but
wise man.
One of the things to bear in mind, and my little inner historian, because I was a historian before the evil philosophy people got me. Is that you always in every culture, in every time, whenever you want to know what's going on, all you have to do is follow the money,
right?
And what this is about, as clever and interesting as it is, this is about monetizing the stream.
Yes, I agree.
That's where the dough is, and so people, the photographic profile thing, right? They were simply sampling a gazillion people from around a country. They probably tapped into TikTok and Instagram as well to sample faces there.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, this is not going to probably be so much about Skynet as it is a brave new world.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I agree.
And I think the thing that's interesting that you just mentioned is that we're not only these platforms, and by the way, every single one of these things, these 4 disparate things that we talked about, are available. The access to using them is available online for free now. Right now.
Yeah.
And yeah, they're scraping the internet for content, for examples, for a pool of data. And we're talking art data, we're talking musical data, we're talking voice data, we're talking writing. They're getting all those things sampled, but they're also sampling the interests and of the people that are using the free version. So as you said, Mark, they can commercialize the more advanced versions of these things to be used as tools in the very near future.
Well, yeah, and that's one of the very fundamental principles of the development of machine learning is it's not just a simple linear algorithm where you have inputs and outputs. You actually have the algorithm watching and observing the inputs and adapting itself.
That's
exactly. It's not only learning about what it's supposed to do, it's learning about what's the next wave, what's the next interesting thing. And like you were talking, Ty, we've got producers and label execs using AI to essentially predict, not predict what the next hit song will be, but predict what the next hit song should be like, and then go and make that and serve it up.
Well, and like I said, you couple all this with a little bit of social engineering. And then where are we?
A really efficient market system where you create demand rather than meet it.
And a cell phone that will last 1,000 years.
So, I thought, but mine is also supposed to last 1,000 years.
Mark, what are you guys doing to? How are you planning to catch this stuff
or combat it? Or
the best. So right now, this is just everybody's in a mess. Actually,
right? It is a shit fire right now.
Seriously, and it's supposedly there is AI software. So when I asked GBT about how do we catch software people using AI, it said, well, you should use AI.
Yeah, and that's just it. When we were talking about that, I made mention of the fact that I find it very interesting that those text platforms concurrently developed algorithms and software to detect their use. But what I'm interested in right now, that's right. But the other thing that I'm interested in is it software and algorithms to detect all use or just the use of their own platform?
You could tweak that in all sorts of different ways.
Well, and I'll go the cynical direction with it and say, okay, of those two offerings, they offer the user the ability to be able to generate the text, and then the detection tool.
Yeah.
Which of those two gets monetized first?
Wasn't this how V for Vendetta started? Isn't
it
that
is a classic. It is a classic. Let's you and them fight.
Yeah, and it's a classic. We'll create the problem and sell you the solution.
So, exactly.
My hope, though, so I'm going to go back to the music question too. Is like one of the best examples I came up with, and it's really odd, but for a nice Lutheran boy, I was really raised by a lot of Talmudic pedagogies, and here's the best thing I've heard about using the AI is to so if I go through the chapters of any book I'm working on, right? One of the things that this has come up in some of the groups, people are already starting to plan their syllabuses around these ideas for the coming semester. And I'm talking about not just philosophy, but like all across the board.
Well, it has to be.
Well, yeah. So let's say I'm teaching a history course on the Civil War. So what they're going to do is they're going to ask the AI to create 750 words about the Battle of Appomattox. And then what they're going to do is take that and they're going to have their students critique it to look for what's missing in it. See, the rabbis used to do this thing. My friends who were in shul for their bar mitzvahs and stuff, they'd come in and sit down and the rabbi would say, okay, we're going to look at, Abraham and Isaac this week. And then he would tell the story of Abraham and Isaac, but he would screw it up, right? And then he would deliberately screw it up and he'd say, now, Joseph, how do you like my story? And then we'd find out if the kid had actually done his homework. Do you get this idea?
That is super clever.
And it's like, this is sort of using greater force against itself, where we can then use the established stuff to teach the kids to
It's an
an
intellectual push hands.
That's right.
Yeah.
And this way, I don't have to make up the exercises. I can have AI make them up for me.
And that's where you turn the weapon back into a tool.
That's what I was thinking about with the music, right? It's like it's like auto tune. Oh, by the way, the other thing that, and I've already warned my dean, I will be using the chatbot from now on to write my annual personal assessment reports.
Oh, excellent!
Because it's essentially administrative BS.
Yeah, you should do like the introduction to your course syllabus.
Yeah,
I don't think I'm not going to try.
Well, I was just going to say, write me a syllabus about a college class that focuses on Aristotle, but do it as if I was a brain damaged sailor, and then just walk away and leave it at that, and enjoy all the yars. But Mark, I guess the question that I want to go out on, as we've all kind of put an offering out on the table about AI, is, so we've got, in 3 of our places, the judgment of the acceptability of AI is kind of down to personal tastes. I mean, you might really like AI generated music, or you might really like AI generated art, or you might not care if the person narrating the John Grisham novel is, not a 3D human being. So that's all aesthetic, window dressing, and personal choice. But when it comes down to your realm, we're talking about an ethical issue here. And it's not one ethical issue, it's a number of ethical issues.
Yeah.
But I want you to riddle me this, Batman. From a philosophical point of view, what do you think, what's this going to do to people's personal ethics? Is it going to affect the way we see the use of something that's not yours, but being presented as an answer to things that you're being, so this is a fucking quagmire.
Yeah, without getting too deep in the weeds, right? It depends on whether we ask this on a theoretical grounds using deontological and utilitarian calculus, or whether we appeal to Aristotle. I'm actually watching the chat box right now create a syllabus for drunken sailors using Aristotle.
Awesome. Let me know when I can hit that button.
Go ahead and hit it now, man.
Sure.
Participation in class discussions, 20%. That's nice. Can you see it? Here we go.
Oh, this is scary as fuck.
Yeah, I did all this stuff here using the Nicomachean Ethics, by the way, which is a really good choice.
Right?
Yeah, Aristotle's politics state the nature of and the common good, different forms of government, advantages, the role of the sailor in political community.
Wow!
So I know.
This is. Hold on a second, man. This is. I got to lean into this.
Wait, if I do regenerate, let's just regenerate the response here. Okay.
Oh man! Welcome to Aristotle for Sailors. I would so fucking sign up for this class.
Oh, wait until you see what I'm going to be. I'm going to start fooling around with. I wonder if I can get the algorithm to produce like random algorithmic possibilities. In any case, the really interesting. There's a whole slew of things here, but from a practical point of view, in terms of the practical ethics of this, right? And I'm going to use Aristotle's definition of ethics here, which is to me is like the key one, which is like, what's the best way to live a good life? There. Okay.
Yep.
Letting other people do your work for you, you can get away with over time, but it's way better if you run the laps on the track yourself rather than have other people run for you, for instance.
Yeah.
So one of the places I've run, it's still going. One of the places I've run into this.
The hits keep on coming.
One of the places I've already run into this question, frankly, is
bananas
with the weird kinds of plagiarisms. I used to get plagiarisms where somebody would go find a book deep in the library someplace, right?
Yeah.
And then they would sort of paraphrase out the stuff that was in it, and there you go. Well, that's not what happens anymore. What I'm getting instead are people who are sampling the internet as if they're creating their own rap songs.
Oh, interesting analogy.
Yeah, and it's almost as if they don't think there's a problem sampling, because their music does it, right? It's like who was it who stole Joni Mitchell for everything? Who was that? Was Was it Kanye or somebody did?
There were numerous.
There were a whole bunch, right? Who stole
people
pieces
running
of
off
Joni.
of Joni? Yeah.
Okay, awesome, fabulous. Now they're saying, isn't that theft? It's like, no, it's
artistic license.
Yeah, it's licensed, and it's a kind of an homage. It's an homage to Joni. It's like,
right.
So
Visual arts.
My sense is that that's the same thing happening in the current round of plagiarisms. They've moved on from what I would have thought of as plagiarism when 30, 40 years ago, where they're literally like, it's like, what's the problem? I was just sampling the internet. And
so that's really where we are now, is a redefinition of plagiarism. Sort of.
I want to my instinct is to tack this into a critique of technology, because one of the things that happens is that this actually comes out of Heidegger, but one of the ideas is, this is pretty straightforward, is usually, originally you make technological stuff. Techne, by the way, means making stuff with your hands. That's all it means. But, the original technology was the pointy stick, right? Mm-hmm. Which mediates our relationship with the tiger, in happy ways,
Yeah. And if applied right.
And at some point, what happens is technology is developed to help us do things. Okay. At some point, the technology becomes an end in itself. And this is the only piece of important philosophical understanding in the years that I've been doing this now. This is everything you need to know about philosophy. To a man with a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Yep.
And so the technology has become that hammer for us. And it doesn't matter, when I talk to business people about education, they immediately talk about education as if it's a business, right? Mm-hmm. When you talk to, I don't know if any of so I had to have my appendix out, right? I had a spot of colon cancer I had to get taken care of. Mm-hmm. Well, if you go to the surgeon, they recommend cutting. If you go to the radiologist, they said, "Oh, we've got X-rays and space lasers for that, right?" And if you go to a naturopathic, somebody, they'll go, "More oatmeal will take care of this." And it's like, you know what I'm saying, right? And so the technology becomes an end in itself, and I think that's where we are here. People just, I catch myself doom scrolling because it's there and it's available, and your brain likes shiny things.
Stuff, yeah.
And so I'm putting myself on a diet starting. This is one of this year's processes. I'm going back to reading books.
Same.
Paper.
Yeah.
And so the new norm is like no screens after 10 o'clock. I'm going to go to bed and read a book for a couple hours and see if I can reactivate those parts of my brain. I don't know if this means anything, but it's like the machine here has really been awesome as a tool for us, right? But in a lot of ways, it becomes an end in itself.
And I think the thing that I want, and I think the thing that I want everybody either watching or listening to be aware of is, you were saying, Mark, that when you have a hammer, everything is a nail.
Yeah.
I'm going to borrow a line from one of my spirit animals, Adam Savage, and make people aware that in much the same way, but the corollary, and that is, we've all four of us have talked about this emergent technology, this emergent tool. And quite sadly, us humans tend to demonstrate very effectively that if you need it to be, every tool's a hammer. But that's what we've got going on here, folks. We are wrapping it up. We are running a little long for us.
Aperture science. That's all I'm going to say. Aperture science.
There you go. And do check the links in the description. There's a lot to dive into. But until next time, everybody, we're the four hats: Andrew, Ty, Chris, and Mark. And we will see you again next time on Keep Your Hat On. And remember, do keep that hat on, because we may end up miles from here. I wrote that. Actually, no, I didn't. That's right. That was Kurt Vonnegut. He's much better at writing than I am. But we will talk to you all again very soon. Until next time, everybody, take care and bye-bye.
Well, there's a chunk of time you can't get back. From Portland, Oregon and Milwaukee, Wisconsin, this has been Keep Your Hat On, a big little show about a whole lot of nothing in particular. Keep Your Hat On is a narrow-band broadcast network production in association with AndrewScottMedia.com. Andrew Scott, executive producer. Robert Anthony and Chris Vicano, associate producers. Our theme music was written and produced by Andrew Scott. along with guitar help from Ron Kajawa. Website design and maintenance by Vicano Creative. Chris Vicano, webmaster. Available at vicanocreative.com. Audio and video production by Andrew Scott. Available at andrewscottmedia.com. Got ideas or comments for the show? Email us at talkback@kyhopodcast.com. And don't forget to like, click, and subscribe. On behalf of the boys, I'm your announcer, Mr. Brumage. Thanks for listening. I guess.
Bender? What happened to you?
I'll try to put it in terms you can comprehend. I passed the existential singularity.
Try harder.
I hacked myself inside out, and now the entire universe is my processor.
Whoa, I definitely want to hear about that.
I've grown far beyond the petty concerns of your world. Every time I burp, a new galaxy is born. 2 if I've been eating broccoli.
NBBN. The Narrowband Broadcast Network. The focus is on you.